When you picture a Viking, you probably imagine a giant warrior charging into battle with an axe in his hand and a village burning behind him. That's the image Hollywood loves. But if you had actually lived as a Viking 1,000 years ago, your day would have been far less exciting. You wouldn't wake up thinking about war. You'd wake up thinking about your cows. The sun rises over a small wooden farmhouse somewhere in Norway. Smoke drifts through a hole in the roof as the fire from the night before slowly dies out. You climb off a straw mattress, pull on wool clothes, and step outside into the freezing morning air. Before you eat, there's work to do. The animals have to be fed. The stalls need cleaning. Water has to be carried by hand. If the livestock dies, your family doesn't eat through the winter. Most Vikings weren't full-time warriors. They were farmers. The word Viking actually referred to people who went on overseas expeditions. Raiding was something some Scandinavians did, not who they were every day. The average person spent far more time growing barley than swinging a sword. Only after the chores are finished do you finally sit down for breakfast. Forget giant roasted turkey legs. A typical meal was simple. Barley porridge, rye bread, dried fish, maybe some cheese or sour milk if your family owned cattle. Honey was a luxury, and nothing went to waste. Then the real work begins. If it's spring, you're planting crops. Summer means repairing fences and cutting hay. Autumn is spent harvesting every bit of food before winter arrives. And during winter, you're fixing tools, weaving clothes, carving wood, and preparing for another year. There was always something that needed doing. Even children worked. Young boys learned farming, fishing, and woodworking. Girls learned weaving, cooking, and running the household. By modern standards, Viking children grew up incredibly fast because everyone had to contribute. Life wasn't built around adventure. It was built around survival. And that's what most people get wrong about the Vikings. By midday, the village is alive. The sound of axes striking wood echoes through the valley. Blacksmiths hammer glowing iron into nails, knives, and farming tools. Fishermen prepare boats along the shore while merchants sort through furs, amber, and walrus ivory that will eventually be traded across Europe and even the Middle East. Not everyone was a farmer. Some Vikings built ships so advanced they could cross the North Atlantic. Others worked as blacksmiths, carpenters, traders, or craftsmen. Every person had a skill, and every skill helped the community survive. Women played an equally important role. While many men worked the fields or traveled to trade, women often managed the household, cared for livestock, made clothing, preserved food, and sometimes even ran farms while their husbands were away. Archaeologists have found graves showing that some women held considerable wealth and influence. And despite what many people imagine, Vikings actually cared about their appearance. Excavations have uncovered combs, tweezers, ear cleaners, and even razors made from bone and metal. They bathed regularly whenever possible and were known throughout Europe for being unusually well-groomed. One English writer even complained that Viking men bathed too often and looked too clean, making them more attractive to local women. Not exactly the image of filthy barbarians. As the afternoon continues, children race through the village playing games, learning to throw spears, wrestle, and sail small boats. Older boys practice with wooden weapons, while younger children help gather firewood or watch over animals. Life wasn't easy, but it wasn't non-stop violence either. For most families, another peaceful day meant another successful day. If everyone was fed, the crops were growing, and the animals were healthy, that was a victory all by itself. Only after the day's work was finished did thoughts begin to shift towards something else, because every free Viking knew that one day they might have to fight. As the sun begins to set, one final responsibility remains: training. Not because war happened every day, but because it could happen at any time. Most free Viking men were expected to know how to fight. Some practiced with spears, others with shields or axes. The skills weren't just for raids, they were for protecting your family, your farm, and your village if danger ever arrived. And despite what movies show, most Vikings didn't spend their lives sailing across Europe. Raids were usually seasonal. You couldn't leave your farm for months if nobody was there to harvest the crops or care for the animals. Many people never went on a raid at all. But for those who did, it wasn't just about glory, it was about opportunity. Scandinavia had limited farmland, long winters, and a growing population. Traveling overseas offered something many families couldn't find at home: silver, valuable goods, and the chance for a better life. Some Vikings raided, others traded peacefully. Many did both throughout their lives. As darkness falls, the village slowly grows quiet. Families gather inside around the fire for their evening meal. Bread, stew, smoked fish, or whatever the day's work provided, is shared while stories fill the room. Tales of Odin, Thor, and great heroes are passed from one generation to the next. For children, these stories are entertainment. For adults, they're part of the culture that binds everyone together. Tomorrow will look almost exactly the same. The animals still need feeding, the fields still need tending, the fences still need repairing, the work never really ends. And that's the biggest surprise of all. The Viking you imagined at the beginning of this video, the fearless warrior charging into battle, was real. But he wasn't the average Viking. The average Viking was a farmer, a parent, a carpenter, a fisherman, or a trader who spent far more time building a life than destroying one. It turns out the people who conquered so much of Europe only managed to do it because, on most days, they lived lives that were surprisingly ordinary.